AI-driven gamified assessments. With over 30 plus years of experience in the HR landscape, Paul has helped organizations in Asia and Africa with his proven talent management and recruitment strategies. Paul has been a sought-after speaker and is trending, and he covers exponential technologies and trending topics like gamification, HR tech, psychometric assessments, neuroscience games, and etc. Paul has also been the CEO and managing partner of Engaged Consulting in Pakistan and UAE. May I now request all of you to welcome Mr. Paul Keijzer.
Thank you. All right, so I have got this enviable opportunity to keep myself and yourself awake after lunch. So let me do that by making this as interactive as possible to make sure is that, the energy goes to your brain and not to your stomach. So my name is Paul Keijzer. I am your, if you see all these faces up there, I'm your resident Gora. Yeah, so I've been here together with, we've been here for about 16, I've been here for 16 years. And I'm sure I've seen most of you in one capacity or another over these last 16 years. The last 3 years has been very exciting years for me personally, because not only have I been exposed to a number of thoughts and ideas that I would like to share with you, but at the same time, in addition to my consultancy, my leadership development consultancy firm, I've set up a HR technology startup. So I always now say that the consultancy firm feeds my stomach and the startup feeds my brains. And I don't know how many of you in this room has ever worked for or set up a startup? 1, 2, 3, 4, primarily ladies, that's wonderful to see. Worked for a startup? It was not ACCA, was it? And I promise you, working for a startup is a very different animal. It's a very different animal, because you start with an idea and you hope that that idea has got some traction, and then suddenly you've got to find yourself with the first client and you go all over the moon, and then hopefully you can scale it up. So what I'm going to talk to you about, my company is called The Talent Games, and we're all about the power of gamification. But before I go into that specific area, I want to give a little bit of context which basically summarize a lot of the stuff that was happening before lunch. So in the 3 or 4 slides, I'm trying to put it all together, and I'm just picking some of the thoughts that the previous speakers have shared with you. First and foremost, I think everybody is aware that we're living in an age where changes are happening faster and faster. And there are 3 forces that are driving that. One is around technology. One is certainly around the environment, which not too many people have spoken about. And the third one is about interconnectivity. Because the forces that are driving innovation are accelerating and compounding. The problem with us humans is that we are very, very good in understanding and being good in linear thinking. So if I ask a majority of you, if I take 30 steps, where will I end up? I'm sure the majority of you will say just outside of this conference room, correct? If I ask you, if I take 30 exponential steps, exponential means that you double every time. Does anybody know where I end up? Let's do it. So let's do exponential. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024, 2048, 4096, 8192, and then I stop. Then I don't know anymore. But that's about 7 or 8. But if I take 30 exponential steps, where I end up is I end up 25 times around the world. Because 2 to the factor 30 is 1,080,000,000. Yeah? So for the smart cookies, the ones that are not sleeping at the moment, where do I end up if I take 29 steps? Ah, come on. The accountants must know this. Where do I end up? Huh? 5 times. No, you're sleeping. Where do I end up if I take 29 steps? Yeah, 12 and a half times. At least somebody is awake. Yeah? And that's the whole point. And where exponential growth in the beginning looks like it's a very small change, when you hit the big numbers, the changes are really, really, really big. And you don't know what's happening to you. And the gentleman from IBA was referring to this transition. But over the last 50 years, the famous Mr. Moore from Intel, who invented the Intel microchip, he said this in 1965. It was the year of my birth. So this law is now 54 years old. He said that every 2 years, the price of the speed of the number of calculations is going to double for half the cost. Yeah, so that's a proper exponential curve. And as a result, if you would apply that to technology of a car, a Volkswagen Beetle that you would have bought in the end of the 60s would now be able to drive 500,000 kilometers an hour, would have a mileage of about 400,000 miles to a gallon, and would cost 3.5 cents. Yeah, so that is the magnitude of accelerated change. Similarly, that in terms of technology, they now anticipate that by the end of the next decade, so not so far away, by the end of the next decade, for $1,000, for the same price as this thing, you can buy the computing power of a brain, a human brain. So, and if you continue to do that, by 2050, you actually can buy for $1,000 that this phone costs of the whole human race of 7 billion people. Yeah? And the quantum computer that was asked for earlier is an example of how, on an exponential scale, the ability to do logarithmics of a logarithmic scale, the improvements are happening. So technology-wise, we all know that this is going faster than you and I are comfortable with. At the same time, I promise you that on the environment, things are changing faster. This is a slide till 2016. If I add 2017, 2018, and 2019, they all end up as higher temperatures ever recorded in the world. Yeah, so you also see over the last 40 years that our global warming is already changing. And I don't have to give a number of examples. Any news media outlet, you can see examples of what happens if the temperature increases by 2 degrees. Certainly, a big part of Karachi will be underwater. Yeah? Half of Bangladesh will be underwater. Maldives will probably not exist anymore. Yeah? And it is very easy to think about that as 30 years out, but 30 years is, I don't think that anybody in this room, except a few, is younger than 30 years. So it's in less than your lifetime. Yeah? Last but not least is the ability to connect globally. So this was, Facebook does these drawings in terms of their traffic across the world. This was in 2012, this was in 2015, and this was in 2018. Yeah? So significant, you still see China completely empty because they have an alternative to Facebook, but otherwise the world is completely covered in terms of the amount of connections that are there. So as a result, that accelerated change is that you see technology really moving very, very fast. Individuals, some of us are able to keep up, some of us are able to less keep up. Businesses have significantly more problems to keep up, and therefore you now see a lot of industries being completely disrupted by people that are able to apply the new technology. Media companies, except a few, will very soon no longer exist. You all know the examples of the digital phones, or if I try to, I don't know whether any of you, if you go on holiday, whether you try to buy a postcard. The youngsters on here will probably not even remember what a postcard is. Yeah, but when we went on holiday, we sent postcards. It's impossible to buy postcards nowadays. Yeah? Industry is completely gone. And of course, the ones that are going beyond slowest is public and government policy. So that means that there's a lot of discontent growing between what's possible and where governments and public policy is catching up with us. And we as leaders, and I think that's the one message that I want to give everybody here. We as leaders have a significant responsibility to help people keep up with these trends. Because only we have the capital, have the intelligence, and have the influence to actually influence large parts of the public to stay ahead, of at least staying as close as possible to that curve. And as a result, of course, work is going to change significantly. I saw some wonderful examples of what work will look like. But if you read this statement, is this how you work? How many of you feel that this still reflects your relationship with your work? I know you would be lying if half of the room will not say yes. Yeah? Yeah? I think a lot of us will still work in this traditional scenario. But that's not going to last. Yeah? Because very soon, organizations will move from hierarchies to networks. They will move from controlling to empowering. They will move from planning to experimentation. They will move from privacy to transparency. There was a discussion, I had a discussion earlier with Eram Hassan from Karachi Electric. He asked a question during the ACCA presentation around succession planning. And he asked me, Paul, what is succession planning not relevant anymore? And I think the planning part of succession planning is not going to be relevant anymore. It's going to be a spot market of talent. And you have to make sure that you have to get everybody ready on time. Yeah? So the whole component, any person that's in a strategic planning function, I think very soon they have to change the name to strategic insight function or strategic projection function. Yeah? So these are and of course that has got a huge impact in how you manage talent. Because, and we saw the examples of all the different cultural and value traits of the different age groups in organization. And I promise you that my 20-year-old daughter would not like to have the same type of relationship that I had with my employer. Yeah? She even laughs at me if I say that I go to the office at 8 o'clock in the morning. Yeah? It's not something that she aspires to. So, two things are going to happen. First of all, we have to re-identify what is talent. And talent is not, per definition, or only the person that has got an employment relationship with the organization. If you continue to see talent in that old-fashioned statement, then I think you're going behind the curve. You really have to view talent as anybody that can add value to your organization. Doesn't matter whether they're employed, doesn't matter whether they work for a third party that works with you, doesn't matter whether they work for consultants that work with you, doesn't matter whether it's a freelance resource that you use, or even that you crowdsource. Anybody that can add value to your organization is important. And for me, I've been asked to keep it to 30 minutes, so I'm going to keep this one very short. There are 6 different elements that you really have to do in order to make sure is that you get the best out of talent whilst all these changes are happening. The first one is that you have to be constantly on the lookout for talent. And that doesn't mean talent that can join your company, but talent that can add value to your organization. So if today you've not identified or spoken to 2 or 3 people that you think could potentially add value to your organization, you've not done your job today. So in the networking session, make sure that you meet more people. Secondly, to my HR colleagues, please throw out that black book that you have and make sure is that you empower people to play by the rules of as if this is their own company. You have to start treating talent as partners and not as employees. You have to provide lifelong learning. You have to make sure that for meaning, the gentleman early in the morning around vision and purpose, and the one that I want to spend on a little bit more time on, is that in order to really engage talent, you have to start using smart technology. And for everything, there's an app for that. Whether it's to do with giving feedback, whether that's to do with generating ideas, whether that's to do with setting goals, whether that's to do with acquiring talent. For everything, there's an app for that. And I don't know how many of you are using some of these technologies. I'm sure all of you are using self-service technologies and transactional technologies, but this is all about some of the talent management components. And one element that has really started to take off is this concept of gamification. Why? Why suddenly this concept came up? Why is it so popular? It engages people, thank you. What else? Stimulates ideas, fantastic. What else? The demographics. Although it's interesting is that mobile gamers, the highest playing demographic of mobile gamers in the US are females above 45, which is something that you probably would not have expected. Yeah? So I get the demographic part of it. That's not per definition the case. Any other ideas? Sense of accomplishment. Yeah, because if you play a game that you feel that you've achieved something. Yeah, so for me these are the 5, 6 elements that companies should use gamification. Whether it's to do that you engage employees more, that you get instant feedback about levels and awards, that you drive behavioral change, that has a significant impact with, interaction with, and impact on the brand, that it transforms the experience, and in many, many cases, it's significantly faster and cheaper. Because if you want to make an investment in developing this, you have to get a business case for that as well. And it's not only for employees. This is an example from Heineken in how they are using gamification as part of engaging with their customers. Can you just play the video for a few seconds? Video, please.
The UEFA Champions League is watched by over 1 billion people worldwide, often on their own at home. We wanted to make their TV experience more like being a fan in the stands, more active, more social, more thrills. This is Heineken Star Player. Star Player gives you skin in every game. Prove your football instincts by responding live to critical match moments. Anticipate and react in real time as the game plays out, just like the teams on the pitch. Stay one step ahead of the action as you create a stake in every shot, corner, free kick or penalty. Dialing up the tension and getting right inside the game. So no matter who's playing, you'll have a reason to celebrate. The UEFA Champions League.
Thank you. Just turn the... Yeah. So, can you imagine that Super has got a cricket game going on when Pakistan plays India? And for every wicket, you can then interact with the game and get some points, get leaderboards in terms of how that might impact. Can you imagine what that will do to the brand of Super? Or whether it's Coca-Cola or whether it's anything. I think there's a huge opportunity for brands to really use gamification to interact with their consumers and customers. Similarly, I think there's a huge opportunity to use gamification in HR, and that's of course where I've spent 30 years of my career. So you can do it for all kinds of different things. But the 2 things that I want to focus on, one is learning. Any of you are using gamification in learning at the moment? Nobody? Okay, well let's look at an example. Can you play this video please?
After cardiac arrest or choking, because those around them didn't have the simple skills needed to keep them alive. Nevertheless, the training for these skills is still dominated by techniques little changed since the 1970s. Lifesaver is a crisis simulator which fuses interactivity and film to teach CPR on a smartphone or tablet. It throws you into 3 emergency situations where it's up to you to make the right decision and save a life.
Excuse me, you okay?
In Lifesaver, you learn by doing. In this case, you move your tablet up and down to do CPR on a cardiac arrest victim.
What are you doing?
What a great app. Not only is it informative, but actually the ability to put you in an emergency situation is fantastic.
No, he can't wait.
When you're using the app, you definitely feel like you're under pressure and that you need to make the right decision, because otherwise if you don't, then it's going to be detrimental to the patient.
Okay, stop the video, please. Thank you. I promise you that this way of training people is much more engaging than getting 30 people in a room, tell them about CPR. Yeah? You actually are in a crisis situation. You're actually being asked to use the different movements. And I think as a result, ability of learners to retain knowledge, to practice specific skills, and to actually start using it is significantly enhanced. So, whether it's to do with product knowledge, whether it's to do with soft skill training, whether it's to do with specific compliance training that many of you will do, I think there's a huge opportunity to make that much more cheaper, affordable, because you don't have to send your trainers to train 15,000 people in all your branches on a governance training, and you can easily do that through all kinds of gamification elements. The third one, and that's where my personal company comes into play, is in the area of recruitment. And the whole concept is here to completely transform the recruitment experience. So let me tell you what, normally for people that graduate, what is the recruitment experience? You apply for a company, you send in a resume, and most of the time you hear nothing back. Yeah, that is the majority of recruitment, that's how a recruitment process starts. You see a vacancy, you've been asked to apply, you send in your resume, black, bottomless pit, nothing returns. How is that for a candidate experience? Not so good, huh? Maybe negative, even. So then look at the company side. So as a company, you've got a vacancy, you've got 600 resumes, and you suddenly have to screen 600 resumes. What happens? Most of the time that's been done by the most junior person in the team, who has got he's got little bit of experience and a lot of biases associated with it. As a result, what do you think is the quality of the long list that comes out of that pre-screening process? Pretty poor. So the idea was to completely change that, because the recruitment process has not changed for the last 75 years. I think the last innovation in recruitment was assessment centers that was there at the Second World War in Europe, when the American army started to use assessment centers. Ever since then, recruitment process has been exactly the same, at least for as long as I've been in that process. So the idea was, how can we completely change the recruitment process? And the idea that we came up with was, instead of you sending a resume to a company, you invite you to play a game. And that game is a real work-life scenario-based gamified assessment that when you've played it, you get feedback in terms of how you've scored, and at the same time, the company gets significant amount of insights into your abilities. So let me show you how it works. Can I play this video, please? So this is a proudly Karachi-made product. Yeah, that's been now sold in South Africa, Nigeria, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, and the UAE, and Pakistan. We've assessed now 200,000 candidates through this platform, and it's our ambition, of course, to grow that as much as we can. And then I would actually publicly recognize two companies that are two clients that are in our midst. ICI, who's been the very first company that worked with us on gamified recruitment, and of course AKU, who's been doing the same over the last 12 months. So there is a possibility for innovation in HR, and I really salute you for that initiative. So as a result, what do you think in terms of candidate experience? Would they do this like this better than sending a resume or not? Yeah, just a little bit? You would like to play the game. I know you would like to play the game. So you get deep assessment. You make assessment on cognitive abilities, competencies, aptitude, as well as a personality test. You saw the candidates in the demo doing what we call an avatar selection. So he chooses what kind of color clothes, what kind of clothes he's wearing, what kind of facial expression he's making. And all of that is part of a personality type assessment. So the way that people select their avatar tells them a lot about them as a personality. Then we've got cognitive ability and situational judgment test. So as a result, everybody plays the same game. Doesn't matter whether you've got a GPA of 3.85 or 2.85, everybody's got the same opportunity to play the game, and as a result, the same opportunity to be assessed. It's much more fun. You get significantly better data insights, and we've recently talking about the gentleman from IBM that talks about predictive analytics. So we've now got a data pool of 200,000 candidates, and we can now, with an accuracy of 72%, predict which of the candidates will progress towards the end of the recruitment cycle. I don't think any interview tool is able to actually claim that. So slowly we come from descriptive, we're now moving to predictive analysis, and we can start helping clients by actually upfront identifying what kind of candidates will not only reach the last stage of their selection process, but also subsequently inform them which candidates will most likely to stay with the organization for some time. And I have to finish. Then the last one, of course, around employer branding. And I think on the question, would gamification in recruitment make a company more desirable? 78% of millennials say yes. So if there's something that makes a difference, I think it's that. And these are some of our clients that we've been working with. My intention of sharing this with you is two things. One part was to do with, we are in a fast accelerating changing world. And we as leaders have a responsibility to help not only other people in the company, but also larger society to adapt to that change as much as possible. Secondly, I hear a lot of companies talk about we want to apply digital technologies, we want to transform digitally, but when I then ask, how are you doing that? I draw a blank. And it's very, very important for you to start translating that desire into specific elements, whether it's to do with customer interaction, whether that's to do with efficiencies, whether that's to do with HR processes, and gamification is one that really showcases how you can engage employees in a very affordable manner. Any questions? Because otherwise I've been thrown off stage. Okay, you want me off stage anyway. No questions. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much.